Patricia Mukhim. She is currently the editor of the leading daily in the Northeast as a Shillong Times. She is a journalist of repute and relevance, a social scientist in her own right, and has a keen understanding of the Northeastern society, economy, and polity. She was a member of the National Security Advisory Board of the Government of India and served as a member of the National Foundation for Communal Harmony under the Ministry of Home Affairs. She has many other dimensions to her personality, but I'm not, because of the paucity of time, I just end it up here itself. Then I come to, I think, Professor U.K. Dey. Professor Dey is currently working as a professor in the Department of Economics, my own department, and is a known social scientist and economist in this part of the country. So I welcome you, Professor Dey, Madam Mukhim. Then I have with me Dr. Prasenjit Biswas. Dr. Prasenjit Biswas currently works in the Department of Philosophy, and he is a known social scientist in this part of the country, and he is a regular columnist and also appears for different news channels in this part of the country. He's a known name in this part of the country. Then we have with us Professor A.P. Pati. Professor A.P. Pati is a professor in the Department of Commerce, Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. Professor Pati currently holds the position of Dean of the School of Economics, Management and Information Sciences. He is known in his own sphere of work, basically in the areas of finance and microfinance. So welcome both Professor Pati and Dr. Prasenjit to this roundtable, budget roundtable. Then we have online two eminent panelists here itself, economists of repute. I start with Professor Lakhwinder Singh. Professor Singh currently is a Professor Emeritus, Khalsa College, Punjab University, Patiala. He was also earlier the head of the Department of Economics of Punjab University, Patiala, and also the founder director of Center for Development Economics and Innovation Studies, CDEIS, Punjab University, Patiala. He has a postdoctoral degree in development economics from Yale University in the United States of America. Professor Singh works on issues such as agricultural distress, farm economics, and economics of innovation. And there's a large number of celebrated books to his credit. So I welcome Professor Singh to this roundtable of ours.
Thank you.
Then we have with us Professor M.P. Bezbaruah. Professor Bezbaruah is a well-known economist in this part of the country, particularly in the nation and also in this part of the country. Currently, he works as a professor of economics, Gauhati University. He is also a member of the Governing Council of Indian Council of Social Science Research, New Delhi. Earlier, he was also the Dean of Faculty of Arts, Gauhati University, and also the head of the Department of Economics in the same university. And he other dimensions positions also he had occupied in the past. I know because of the paucity of time, I just end it up here itself.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so there is some disturbance somewhere. Okay, so with this introduction, I think Professor Mishra is also here. Just forgot. Yeah. Then we have Professor B. Mishra from the Department of Economics. He's a known economist in this part of the country. And Professor Mishra specializes in public economics. And then he teaches public economics, he researches on public economics, and he has a number of publications to his credit, and also provides policy support to different state governments of this region. So I welcome Professor Mishra, then Professor Singh, and Professor Bezbaruah to this budget roundtable. Thank you so much, each one of you, for being here itself with us. Now, I think to set the ball rolling, I start with Professor Singh. Those of you who have joined online, I think you can all see Professor Singh there itself. Professor Singh, what's your take on this budget? How would you contextualize this budget when it comes to the kind of unemployment situation in the economy, the kind of required growth rate to so that I think we again go back to the pre-COVID situation that we were in. So what's your take on this budget, and particularly on agrarian distress, the area of your work? If you can little enlighten us, how has the budget dealt with agrarian distress in the country? Over to you.
Please,
Over to you, sir.
can you allow me to share these slides?
So you have the slides, okay.
I have few slides.
Kamali,
Professor, can you outline the way which we proceed?
we will go like this actually. Yeah, each of the panelists will be given 12 to 15 minutes time in the first round, and they have to speak out their mind on the issues. What I see actually, perhaps Professor Singh, Professor Bezbaruah, and then Professor Mishra, they will be mostly speaking on the general issues concerning the budget. But then Professor Pati, I think Madam Patricia, and then Dr. Prasenjit and Professor Utpalde, they would be speaking on specific issues. So we'll start with Professor Singh, who will be basically talking about the macro issues on relating to the budget and its impact on the economy.
Yes.
So, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhagirathi Pandaji, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to be among the very, very eminent scholars in this panel. So I'm grateful to you and your faculty that you have invited me. So without wasting much time, I hope my slides are visible now.
Yes, it's visible. It's visible.
So now let me begin with the first slide stating that the budget is actually a tool of public policy. And in economic theory, we have the combination of demand side and the financial side, the real economy as well as the financial economy integration in an equilibrium framework called ISLM framework, which gives us how we can manipulate one policy or both simultaneously and what will be the possible results out of it. So these two policies which we are using, the monetary policy and fiscal policy, that is budget is expected to manipulate. These are usually in developed countries are considered as stabilization policies, but in developing countries we are concerned more with growth. So therefore it is having a dual purpose of stabilization with growth. So fiscal policy generally need to be providing us
economics department
growth with emphasis on redistribution of income. So that does mean that growth, how growth is going to happen and how redistribution, it is a simultaneous process in the fiscal policy, which I think that the budget is relatively ignoring such kind of use of the fiscal policy. In this background, we will have the COVID-19 pandemic, 2 years now completed, and downturn has happened. And we are also recovering, as budget has been believing that we have recovered. But there are a lot of, as Professor Panda has narrated us, a story that perhaps there are a lot to be done by the government. So basic problem of the public policy today in India is to recognize whether Indian economy is facing a structural problem or Indian economy is temporarily suffering from the shock, COVID shock, which has happened in the recent past last 2 years period of time. So my take from the budget is that budget is inclined to only looking into temporary shock and the measures related to that. So growth rate of the Indian economy has been shown to be 9.2%, which we have observed in the just last year, as has been noted down by the budget presentation by the Finance Minister of India. But experts base their prior to COVID-19 pandemic and says that the rate of growth of the Indian economy last year is just 3%. Our Nagraj is very well known in terms of looking into how statistics are being formed and what controversies are involved in changing the base years and all that. So he has recently estimated 3% is the rate of growth actually which has happened. And therefore you'll find that we have to be very doubtful about the kind of projections are made on the basis of the high rate of growth in the economy. So now the budget actually is based on a particular kind of philosophy, which is very well set in the very beginning by the in the budget speech by the Finance Minister of India. So she has laid down 3 pillars that is focusing on laying down the foundations for achieving the target of next 25 years when India is going to be 100 years of independence. So celebrating 100 years of independence is the main focus that where we are going to do. And this budget claims to lay the foundations for particularly where we are going to reach in the when we are celebrating 100 years. So that means 20 years long-term fiscal policy is expected to be laid down. The first important pillar on which the budget is based on is complementing the macroeconomic level growth with the focus on micro level all-inclusive welfare. So earlier budgets and the government policy was talking about inclusive growth, but now they say it is the growth which is very important, but you will find that the welfare that is going to generate inclusion. It is not the growth which is inclusive in nature. So this is a very important pillar to understand what budget is going to do about it. Second is that which is most well known, that is promoting digital economy and fintech, and then your technology enabled development, energy transition and climate action, because COP26, where some commitments have been made by all the countries of the world, including India, by 2070, they have to fulfill the targets. So therefore, for whole generations to, we perhaps not able to see the kind of 2070 commitments when they are going to be met, but you'll find that climate change is very important aspect of this budget. The third pillar, which is most important to my understanding, is that deals with public and private investment and uses the most important principle, which I have been emphasizing for a long period of time. And late Professor Dr. Amya Bagchi was the protagonist of this. He has been largely prescribing that Indian economy is led by public sector investment and private sector follows if public sector do the investment. So this is the important principle which need to be evaluated whether preconditions exist or can be fulfilled or can be met if budget is going to be effective. So this panel needs to take into consideration this as a very important pillar of this. Now, quickly laying down the RBI report, which is called Industrial Outlook Survey, released on just after the budget, February 10, 2022, which states that what are the business expectations, the business assessment index as well as business expectation index, because the budget is addressing to the expectations of the people and how expectations are being formed. So therefore, you'll find that expectation and the business expectations are relatively very high. This is exactly based on 1,000 top companies in India. But you'll find that it is completely ignoring the large proportion of the informal sector and the micro, medium and small scale industries in India. So that is not included here. So business expectation on the one side of 1,000 companies is very high, but in other larger proportion of the economy is very low. But if you look at the counter survey, which is talking about the Reserve Bank of India Consumer Confidence Survey, this survey is revealing us an important story, which Professor Bhagirathi Panda has already conveyed to all of us, that you'll find that the demand side expectations are relatively low. So therefore, you'll find that the demand side expectations are falling. The consumer confidence index is in the negative red zone, and therefore you'll find that it is declining compared to the previous quarter. But this data is based on the big cities of India only. And you'll find that 60% of the population which is living in the countryside is not included here, where you'll find larger proportion of demand is expected to come from there. So you can look at some of the figures given in the budget. Professor Bhagirath Panda has already talked about that, how figures has been there and what is the kind of total expenditure, revenue expenditure and all that. But the most important aspect here is that you have to look into that the kind of fiscal deficit which has been pegged at 6.8% in the last budget, but could not be achieved. It was 69. But this time, it was pegged 6.4% with the rate of growth, which is expected to be very high. So therefore, you'll find that figure is expected to change when we are going to have a next budget. So fiscal expenditure. But I would like to convey to all of you that fiscal restrictions, which has been imposed by this government on the state budgets, that is 4%. So fiscal deficit by the states is 4%, 3.5% plus 0.5%, which is going to be actually, if you are taking actions required in terms of electricity reforms. If you are not doing that, then 3.5% is the fiscal deficit, which is allowed to the states. That does mean there is not a coordination between the union government budget and the state government budget in terms of allowing the states to, larger proportion of activities are given to the states by the Constitution of India as well as by the central government. They have low resources, but still you'll find are restricted not to deal with the kind of situation which they have been facing. So therefore, revenue deficit is also still very high. And you will find that most important aspect is that government is going to borrow and indebtedness is expected to go up, which is going to be given here. You will find that they have reduced substantially the subsidies which are going to the fertilizer, food, as well as petroleum. And then you'll find that you have to look into the one of the good news here is that developmental expenditure, which was kept for the North Indian, Northeast development, which Professor Bhagirath Panda has been talking about, it remained stagnant. So I think this is the last year's budget estimates, and this year's budget estimates are all same. So I think that there is no good news for the Northeast development increase in the budgetary expenditure. But when we look at the rural development, you will find that in the rural development, again, the budget remains same. And the expenditure which has been incurred earlier was relatively lower. So therefore, you'll find that the budgetary expenditures kept keeping it same and reducing some of the very important programs like Manrega gives us the idea about that where budget is laying its eggs on the three principles which we have been talking about. So now the revival of growth in this budget is fundamentally based on 7 engines of growth. That is roads, railways, airports, ports, some mass transportation, waterways, and logistics in infrastructure. So this is the fundamental connection on the basis of which they consider that the crowding and investment is expected to happen. The capital expenditure, which was up from 5.5 lakh crores in 2021 to 7.5 crores in 22-23, which is roughly 35.4%. But if you make a comparison at constant prices, it's lower than 28%. So that is the kind of raise in the capital expenditure, which was expected to happen. It may or may not happen because it depends upon the capacity of the central government to borrow as well as to raise resources, which perhaps is in a great doubt. So this is estimated by the budget by the Finance Minister of India, 2.9% of the GDP. So if you have the previous estimates of the gross fixed capital formation in the country, that is 29%, and the actual rate of growth which we are getting is 3%, we will be able to see that how high is the capital output ratio. So even if we include this one, then I think that the predicted rate of growth about the next year to be achieved is 8%, which has been lowered down by the international agencies and accepted by the government of India that this is going to be because the world's economy situation is not expected to improve. So therefore, the government has been looking into a very high rate of growth, but you will find actually we are receiving a very low employment. That is the contradiction which is of this model of growth, but inclusive welfare, not inclusive development. So that is a fundamental problem of this budget. So budget estimated to generate employment in the next 5 years, 6 million persons in the next 5 years period of time. That is average 1.2 million persons. So now yearly entry of new workforce in the labor market is 20 million people. So in the next 5 years, it is going to be 100 million people. So adding the backlog and additional workforce expected to be released by the rural sector is around 100 million. So that does mean that we are going to reach to the level of 300 million unemployment people, but generating annually 1.2 million employment. So if employment rate is very low, then you'll find that you can see the demand is going to be very difficult. So big gap between the supply side and aggregate demand is going to be a worrying feature. And without aggregate demand, it is not probably able to achieve the kind of targets which we have here. So measures suggested in the budget are supply side, but the constraints are imposed on the demand side where the budget has not taken into consideration. Now, I would like to conclude with what are the diagnostic problems of this budget, because the budget is emphasizing continuously in the last 2-3 budgets on the supply side, that supply side has a problem. And on the other hand, we all know that there is an excess capacity, as well as there is a small and micro, small and medium enterprises, where you'll find that the entrepreneurs are not able to see there is any demand, and they are even committing suicides. So that is the small businesses. People have started committing suicides. That is the kind of distress which they have faced because demand is not there. So therefore, they are the people who are generating huge amount of employment. So that is a fundamental problem. So the budget has been mainly emphasizing that this is a temporary shock, that is COVID-19, but structural problem where you'll find that if see the long-term rate of growth, as Professor Panda has talked about, that is continuously decelerating the rate of growth, and employment elasticity is 0.1. So therefore, you'll find that the employment generation capacity of the economy has gone down very low. So therefore, one has to look into that. If structural problem is there, the budget is not able to address those structural problems. It is only addressing the temporary kind of issues which we have been talking about. So what is very important is that we are expecting that redistribution through is going to be done in this budget through welfare measures, which I believe that these are the hawk measures. They are not actually generating inclusive growth. So what has happened is that the tax system, which you see that no change in slabs, and the change in slabs, which is reducing the rate of taxes to the corporate sector of the economy. And other concessions which has been given, they are continuing. So tax system is highly regressive in nature. That means the larger proportion of the revenue generated by the government is from the indirect taxes. And that is a fundamental problem in our economy, where you'll find that we have 102 billionaires with 22% of the GDP with them, but we have 60% of the rural population with 18% of the GDP. I think this is a huge contradiction. And from 22% of the GDP, we are not able to get enough amount of tax revenue, which is expected to be done. It is talked about even in the international institutions like IMF and World Bank. They have been talking about that if this rise of 22% of the income by the 142 billionaires could have been redistributed, you could have removed complete poverty, and aggregate demand could have not been a problem here. So what is important here is that public policy to change to address the real world problems, but you'll find that the Indian economy is facing the problems of deficiency of demand, but you'll find that they're continuing hitting the supply side through monetary policy, as well as using the fiscal policy to generate the kind of measures that is hitting again the supply side rather than the demand side. So I think that the crowding in investment while increasing the, I welcome that increasing the public expenditure for capital formation, especially developing infrastructure. But if you are going to do the development of infrastructure with public-private partnership, and you'll find that the way technologies are being used by the big business houses, it is generating very little amount of employment, as well as the new technologies which are spreading to all the sectors of the economy. You'll find that it's very difficult to generate employment until direct measures are not taken to generate employment. So if employment is not generated, aggregate demand remain low. And if aggregate demand remain low, then you'll find that the supply side is going to, even if you have created that, remain excess capacity. So that does mean the current private players have a huge amount of investment in terms of profits, which is pending in the bank accounts. They are not coming forward for investment. But this budget has not been able to, generate enough future demand, and therefore excess capacity will remain. Private investment will not come. It is the public investment is going in the hands of the private sector of the economy, where again the blockade in terms of profits is going to happen, and employment will not be generated, and budget is not going to be successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Singh. That was really eye-opening to each one of us present here itself, including our research class who are in large numbers participating here itself. Some of our panelists, our research scholars, and also others who have joined, faculty members who have joined online, may be having some kind of a question or some kind of comments also on your presentation or reflection. So we will take it up after we finish up the whole the whole presentation of all the panelists. Thank you so much once again. Now I think let me now invite Professor B. Mishra, who basically I think is a faculty and teaching public economics, and it's his area of work. And he is the one who deals, I think, teaches budget and researches on budget and public expenditure, etc. So, Professor Mishra, can I request you now to make your presentation or your lecture or your comments on the budget? Particularly, yes. Professor Mishra will be speaking on the macroeconomic impact of the budget.
Yes.
You can take 12 minutes kind of a thing to finish up, and then if there are some discussions, our faculty students will be engaged in.
So I was listening to the lecture of Professor Singh, but I will differ a little bit from him. So you know that to me, this year's budget was an attempt to maintain reasonable trade-off between short-run and long-run economic growth. No doubt, this year's budget was, I will consider it as pro-growth budget with a significant push of capital expenditure to boost the supply side and attract private investment. It has been a commendable and bold step in significantly increasing the capital expenditure by 35.4%, which stands at 7.50 lakhs crores to fund various infrastructure projects. As a student of economics, we are told of the multiplier effect. And it has been proved by various studies that 1 rupee worth of public expenditure will generate ultimately near about 2.18 paise of income in a given economy. So given the multiplier effect, I think that the supply side problem that the government has addressed will ultimately address the question of demand side problem, as it was mentioned by Professor Singh. But what this year's budget, it managed to create is a green and sustainable approach for economic growth, as well as a plan to achieve macro level growth with focus on micro welfare. So with an aim to boost what you call the domestic manufacturing and to create jobs, following an increase in unemployment over the last 2 years, the union budget of 2022-23, it revolves around 3 key pillars. To me, it tried to address the question of inclusive development. It tried to address the question of productivity enhancement, and it tried to address the question of financing investment. To pump prime the economy, the budget emphasized on the Prime Minister Gati Shakti National Master Plan as a transformative approach to boost economic growth and sustainable development driven by its 7 engines. And they are mass transport, waterways, railways, roads, airports, ports, and logistic infrastructure. The strategy also covers national master plan aimed at world-class modern infrastructure and logistics synergy. From Kisan drone to public-private partnership to help deliver high-tech services to farmers, the union budget, it focused on increasing the overall use of technology in the agricultural sector. To provide such high-tech services to farmers, private agri-tech players are likely to engage with the public sector under a scheme that will be launched in the PPP mode. Along with the focus on increasing farmers' digital presence, the proposal also provides the much-needed boost to agriculture startups, including a fund with blended capital raised under the co-investment model, which will be facilitated through NABARD and other agencies. And additionally, what is most interesting, and I liked it, the chemical-free natural farming, it was proposed to be promoted throughout the country with a focus on farmers' lands in the 5 kilometers wide corridors along the river of Ganga. For farmers to adopt natural farming, a comprehensive package for the participations of state governments and MSMEs is to be introduced as it was proposed by the budget. And coming to the productivity enhancement and investment, certain crucial steps like integrations of central and state level systems through IT bridges, end-to-end online e-billing system, and utilizing surety bonds in government procurements and support to 5G under PLI scheme and opening defense R&D for industry, startups, and academia were also announced. At the same time, certain measures like issuance of chip embedded e-passports and providing battery swapping policies as an alternative to settling of charging stations in the urban areas will make a positive impact on the way of living. With the proposed introductions of digital rupee using blockchain and other technologies by the Reserve Bank of India, currency management system may prove more efficient and cheaper. Now I'll come to the fiscal deficit part of the budget. On the fiscal front, there were concerns that government would like to see a sharp slippage on its fiscal deficit target, but the finance minister has announced only a marginal slippage as against a budget target of 6.8% of GDP in 2021-22. The fiscal deficit is now estimated at 6.9%. In line with the path of consolidation, the finance minister has pegged to bring down its fiscal deficit to 6.4% in the GDP in 2020-23. To provide greater fiscal space to states, 2 key steps have been introduced, namely an enhanced outlay to schemes for financial assistance capital investment, and allowing a fiscal deficit of 4% of GSDP, of which 0.5% will be tied to power sector's reforms. As we know that a target figure for country's fiscal deficit cannot be arrived at or in a vacuum. A nation's economic growth rate, current level of indebtedness, debt to GDP ratio, and target fiscal deficit are all interrelated. And India's debt to GDP is currently about 85%. It had held steady at about 68% for the previous 10 years, rising last year when the economy shrank and the fiscal deficit soared due to the stimulus and understandable response. This new 85% debt to GDP proportions is a sound target for India, as I believe and as I think. Even if India desired to revert to its historical 68% debt to GDP, it could afford fiscal deficit next year of about, I think, 7 to 8%. That leaves room for considerable more investment in a country that is starved of essential infrastructure. Of course, debt financed increased public spending. It raises the spectrum of higher inflations and interest rates. Here, what matters is not the increased spending per se, but rather what the spending is for. So, whether capital expenditure, which has been increased by what you call 35.4%, will lead to an inflationary pressure or not. So in that case, as you know, it all depends on the quality of expenditures that the governments it carries out from time to time. And given the emphasis of this year's budget that it will carry on the capital expenditure and infrastructural development. So the apprehensions of a secondary wave of inflations is ruled out. With new public spending, the temptation is there to crowd out private spending on short-term consumption goods with various subsidies and redistributive entitlement programs, because these are politically popular. While these increased consumptions demand, they rarely yield productivity growth, and the result is higher inflations. Sidestep the inflationary trap. The way to avoid the inflationary trap from deficit financing is to direct the new public spending to areas where the private markets underspend because of benefits are hard to capture or the operating cycle is long. For India, the big areas to target for public spending are critical public works to allow, for example, for more stable electricity and faster transportations, soft infrastructures that includes legal and regulatory infrastructures that facilitates this ease of doing business. So I think this year's budget, it addresses to all these aspects. But what we missed and what are your expectations from this year's budget was that India also needs the GST tax structure to be simplified and eased. And that has been a demand by the various states, but this year's budget, it remained silent about it. And also there is not any relief for small taxpayers, which would have helped in overall consumptions. The markets were taken back by the estimated fiscal deficit of 6.4% of the GDP for the fiscal year 2022-23. However, a significant cutback, I think, will really derail the economic recovery after the pandemic blow. On the whole, the Union Budget 22-23 followed a prudent strategy, I'll say, of driving growth through capital expenditure and encouraging private investment with higher public spendings. So that's all from my side, and whatever things that comes up next, we'll discuss in the second round.
Thank you so much, Professor. Enlightening about the fiscal deficit and its impact and the capital expenditure and its probable or would be impact on the economy, the positive impact on the economy. Now, our research scholars and faculty members by itself, they would be, I think, they would be interacting with you if they have some questions subsequently after all the presentations are over. Now, we are not sure of when we may lose this connection, net connection. So keeping that in mind, now let me just come to Professor MP Bezbaruah, who is in fact a known economist in this part of the country, and he would be talking on the key features of the budget and also some comments on the Northeast initiative. So sir, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me in the...
12 minutes time.
Yeah, I'll take 10.
Okay, fine.
17 more minutes. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to congratulate Professor Bhagirathi Panda for already having a very interesting panel. I'm not including myself. We have already had 2 major presentations, and they are slightly contrasting points of view. So we are already getting argumentative, which is quite good, according to Amartya Sen. Even a losing argument, I don't know which argument is losing.
Economists always argue, sir.
A losing argument has a value. All right. So I'll probably not give many arguments, but I'm going to would like to share with you my takes on the budget. And as Professor Panda has pointed out, I'd like to have some comment on the Northeast, especially Northeast initiative. I think I'll agree with Professor Mishra that one of the most important or striking feature of this particular budget is the tremendous, it's highly impressive in proposed increase in, capital expenditure. Yeah, hota nahi. It doesn't happen frequently. Most of the time, the capital expenditure becomes a victim, because whenever you have a shortage of resources, particularly in a post-pandemic year where we have our fiscal deficit had to go to such a high level, okay, then it requires some courage to raise capital expenditure to such a high extent, because the easy route would be, forget about the capital expenditure. Let us just do with the revenue expenditure. Now, this proposed raise in the capital expenditure, it also talks about a strategy. I'll try to minimize my repetition of the things. I think I see 3. Basically, it's a 3-pronged strategy, trying to kill 3 birds with one shot, one stone. First one, obviously, if there's more expenditure, the income will percolate, particularly in infrastructure projects. The long-term returns will come later, but then a lot of construction, other works are there. So obviously, people will be getting some kind of employment. And this is going to, as B. Mishra rightly said, it's going to actually generate some kind of multiplier effect, high or low, so that's going to generate some income if these expenditures could be actually implemented. Second thing is that obviously, once the infrastructure and other things come up, it becomes more profitable for the private investment to take out various projects. So this should actually crowd in. Again, I'm assuming that this proposed expenditures are going to be implemented and in a proper way. So in that case, this is going to crowd in private investment, which will take care of the long run growth prospects of the thing. Thirdly, if you notice this, the kind of expenditures they're talking about productivity and enhancement, skill enhancement, then new infrastructure. Now, this is something extremely important. Like Professor Lakhwinder Singh said, it's looking at how India is going to get back to the same way in which India and China used to be talked about in 2000s. Now of course they're talking about China, not of India as much. To get India to be on the same thing, I think it's highly important to increase the long-term productivity. So this also can be targeted. But what are going to be the downside of this proposal? One is obviously the financing. Of course, the economy has. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, you are very much.
Okay. Okay. So what's happening, in fact, is that, obviously economy has recovered from that pandemic hit, that V, the bottom of the V. Of course, the recovery, people are saying that it's either V shape or K shape. I'm not going into that. So some kind of tax collections are now more buoyant, like take income tax or GST or whatever. Things are moving up. Yet, such a huge expenditure program is going to require more borrowing. I think here I am with Professor Singh that borrowings are going to be much higher than and even if they can stick to the 6.4% of fiscal deficit, that's going to be quite large. What are going to be the problem? Because inflation is already on the up. Wholesale price index is above, I think, 12%, and consumer price index number is also rising by nearly 6%. So prices are already up. Of course, the government says that these are mostly because of international oil prices, not for domestic factors and all that. Whatever it is, but the prices are already up. So this can help actually the poor people hit the poor people very badly, and the deficit can actually add fuel to the thing. But I think government is taking a comfort from the fact that even if goods and services become more expensive, I think we are going to have enough food so that people can at least will get to eat, because we will know, for the last two, luckily in the pandemic time, we had 2 very good agricultural years, and the stock of food grains, particularly rice and wheat, is now about 120 million tons, which is very excessive. We require about 30 million tons for our food grain management, but we have very, very excessive things. So if we run into inflation, the government will be able to supply free food, I believe. Incidentally, 120 million tons, I remember, was the total production of food grains in India in 1978. Now it is a buffer stock. So this is one thing. One problem is, one risk is there. The government is taking a calculated risk because the food stock is there. I've got another 2 observations. Now, regarding, another thing which the budget does is, it makes its position, the government's position, clear about the cryptocurrencies. Because once you talk about taxing of digital assets, basically the cryptocurrency holding, all right, that means you are already recognizing that this is something legal. Because there was a lot of debate going around whether the government is going to ban it or whether the government is going to allow it. So it has become quite clear that the cryptocurrencies are recognized and they're going to be here. I think this is an important point. And of course, RBI is also thinking of, or sort of starting its own digital currency. How this is going to actually work out, it's not absolutely clear yet. But it's not going to be another cryptocurrency. I think it's going to be use something in interbank transactions and all that to cut down the use of cash and all. Now, coming back to a few specific expenditures, we have seen that some expenditure cuts have been done, particularly in health, in MG-NREGA program. I mean, if you compare it to the previous year, not year before. So previous year, actually, the government has to increase. To some extent, these cuts are understandable because last year was an exceptional year. So for what you call this vaccination program, the health expenditure had to be really raised very much. NREGA also as a relief measure has to be increased. But so there has been some expenditure cuts on those. And of course, these are not lower than the pre-pandemic thing. These are higher than the pre-pandemic situation, but somewhat lower than the bad pandemic year. Now, there are 2 interesting, sort of expenditure. Now, defense expenditure, despite the perception that there is a lot of external threat to the country, doesn't increase in real terms. Real terms actually doesn't increase. The explanation government gives is that we had a lot of cushion earlier. So that if that money is spent efficiently, defense-wise, we will be quite safe. Now, what is baffling, of course, the government is proposing to reduce food subsidy substantially, which, in fact, although I don't know what Professor Singh will say, for a long time, I think this was necessary in a way, because, I mean, that can be a different debate. I'll not go into it, my 10 minutes. All right. But this seems how the government is going to do it is very it's not clear, because on one hand, the government has, assured the farmers that MSP is going to continue, the food procurement is going to be continue, and food distribution will obviously continue in the public distribution system. So where and how are they going to cut down the food subsidy? This is absolutely not clear. Fertilizer subsidy cut, I do support those kind of things. So there are some unexplained things for me. If somebody can explain this later on, I'll be very happy. I'll enhance my knowledge. Now coming back to the Northeast, they have a particular program which they have given some name, Prime Minister's Initiative for Development of the Northeast or something like that. And they are allocating about 15,000 crores over and above the general share of the Northeast in the budget. All right. Now, this is something, is not a very substantial amount, but this is symbolically, significant. I'm not saying important or something. See, this special program for Northeast actually started in the time of when Professor Manmohan Singh became the finance minister. When India embarked upon the market-oriented economic reforms, it was realized that some of the backward regions are going to actually suffer more because the market is not going to bring in investment over there. And particularly Northeast had a backlog of, in basic services and basic infrastructure, which was actually well established by the Shukla Commission report. So on the basis of these reports, actually at that time, the special provisions are made for the Northeast, extra spending. If you know about 10% of total expenditure of each department has to be spent for Northeast, although Northeast has a population of about 8%, so more than per capita than rest of the country. And secondly is that if you cannot absorb this expenditure, these are going to be put in a non-lapsable pool, and there are other initiatives which were done for the Northeast. And that was actually needed, and that actually I don't know how far it was fully utilized, but we see that after the 2000s, particularly, most of the Northeastern states had a very high rate of growth. It was almost catching up in the rate of growth. Per capita, of course, maybe a slightly different story. In one of my studies, I have commented that this might, the government enhance expenditure, conscious effort to increase expenditure in the Northeast, actually contributed to that growth process. Now, of course, rest of the country was not very sort of tolerant or not very sort of open to the idea that Northeast should be treated specially. And gradually we saw, although whenever the budget is presented here, there is an expectation by journalists will always ask what is there for the Northeast. That is a very even I got very tired of hearing that question. My point is that gradually this thing was fading out. The special. Probably this was also not required. But after 2014, it's an important year when Professor Mr. Modi has come to power and BJP has come to power. What we find actually is that there has been some emphasis on Northeast again. And of course, the priorities may be slightly different. Earlier, it was purely for development purposes. Now what we find post 2014, there are one is compulsion and one is of course develop. By default, this also helps development. We find that after the BJP government came to power, many connectivity projects which were languishing for years were expeditiously completed. Many more new road construction projects have been taken up and so on and so forth. All right. Now this became very, very necessary in view of the threat by China and other countries. They are actually. You have heard the news, perhaps they have come inside Arunachal Pradesh and built a sort of village. All right. So in such a situation, we can't leave the connectivity in the Northeast, to chance. Okay. Quick movement of troops have become necessary. I think this has actually motivated the government to actually expedite these projects. And the special programs which we now see probably, has come out for the two reasons of course, development of the Northeast, but also the enhanced security concept. I'm not cynical about it. I think it's necessary. The country needs to defend itself. After what we saw, what Putin has done, maybe you never know what Xi Jinping has in mind. He all the time keeps on calling Arunachal Pradesh Southern Tibet. So I think there's a case for looking at Northeast from both developmental and security purpose. So this is all right. I will not be cynical about it. And however, I hope, this is basically for these two objectives also, the focus on Northeast. One is development of the region, then opening up maybe to the East and Southeast Asia, I mean, three objectives. And the third one is, of course, the security of the country, particularly from threat of China and China, basically. So I think that is quite well deserved. So we need to focus on Northeast. But I hope it also, there is no other agenda like, bringing in particular way of thinking, way of life, which should be, extended and imposed in the Northeast. So there is a concern regarding that also. Now, I'll just finish in 1 minute. Lakhwinder Singh's analysis was interesting, and his concern about poverty, inequality, all those things we do share. I think this requires some more debate and technology. If you are thinking that, we can avoid technology, that will be not possible. If technology is efficient, we have to take it. I think if we need to have maybe a Bhagirathi can organize another session for that. I think in the long run, we have to bring in the whole concept of universal basic income, which can be the answer for sharing the whatever prosperity we have, the country as a whole have, with all sections of population. Okay. With this, I'd like to wind up. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Professor Bezbaruah, particularly contextualizing budget with respect to the development of Northeast. So we got a Northeast insight from you. So with this, I think three of our panelists who came online, they have finished their presentations, their reflections. Now, I think I will go to, Madam Patricia Mukhim. We have heard three eminent economists. Now it's time to hear someone who, as a social scientist, represents the common man. I think much more than what we as academicians do represent. It's not that we do not represent the common man, then she represents the common man in their in their very natural aspirations and voices. So ma'am, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This doesn't go on, no?
No need of it. I think you can speak from anywhere. It will be audible. No. I think this is there, so we don't need actually. Anywhere you can speak, it will be audible.
Yes, sure. As a common person, or should I say common man in bracket gender neutral, I know the impact.
Professor Singh, I'm sorry. Are you able to, or Professor Bezbaruah, Professor Mishra, are you able to hear Madam
Yes, of
Patricia?
course, of course. Yes.
Yes, very well, very well.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, I would like to look at how the budget impacts common man, but especially the common woman. And the problem with discussing the budget is that the moment people go to figures and percentages, then the large percentage of the population of this country switch off. They can't relate to figures. They would just like to know exactly what it means to them. And I was quite flummoxed by the preamble that the finance minister read out when she said the king should collect taxes without any laxity and according to religion. I'm not sure which religion she is inferring to, because there are so many of them in this country. And also what that particular religion speaks about when it speaks about taxation. And it's also a fact that the common man or the common woman has expectations, but nobody ever asks them. Pre-budget, it is always the corporate honchos who will be asked. It's always big business people who will be asked what their expectations are. Nobody comes to ordinary people to ask them what they are looking forward to in the budget. If we look at the budget this time, the highest allocation has been to transportation, followed by rural development, then agriculture, education and health, then urban development, and the least is towards social welfare. As everyone had said before me, I think the budget for 22-23 has been particularly made for boosting the economy, in boosting infrastructure and the manufacturing sectors, and to lead on to the digital economy. I don't know how many of us will be alive here when this budget does make an impact, because it's intended to impact on India's 100th year. So a lot has been said about this budget not taxing, not raising income tax, which is good because only 2% of the Indian population actually pays taxes. So whether they raise the taxes or don't raise the taxes, I don't think that makes too much of a difference. And as some economists have said, people have a greater incentive to evade taxes because the benefit from tax evasion justifies the cost of being caught, and the chances of being caught are far too less in this country. People have gone off with thousands of crores of rupees, and we are still chasing them. And I think bigger taxation also means that you disincentivize hard work, you disincentivize people who want to do more. And there is a hope from some economists that lakhs of crores of rupees that are stagnating will be released into the market and put into productive use. The budget is ostensibly gender-friendly and taxpayer-friendly. What we don't really see is what actually matters to the common person. The common person is looking at improvement in healthcare, employment growth, reduction in GST because all of us then have to pay more for the things we use at home. We are looking for a fall in petrol prices, in diesel, in the fall of prices of LPG cylinders, which are now touching rupees. And I think the government should have reduced VAT on household products. In the health sector, there's this proposal for launching an open platform, which will be for the national digital health ecosystem. And I think one positive thing about this budget is a tele-mental health program, which is supposed to be rolled out to address people with mental health problems, because the pandemic has seen such a high rise in mental health problems, and many of us are actually in denial that we need help. I think this might help those who are in denial to come out more openly because it's a tele-mental health program. There is no talk on gender budgeting in health, especially, which to me is very critical. If you treat health in a gender-blind manner, in a gender-neutral manner, you may not see the outcomes that are intended because women have many more areas of concern than men, especially when it comes to diseases like cancer. There is the cervix cancer, there is the uterus cancer, there is the breast cancer, and cancer of the fallopian tubes. Which
Kimberly, just I think mute them. Mute all of them except the speakers. Huh?
So,
Yes, ma'am. Please.
I think some allocation for gender budgeting is very, very important in the budget. In Meghalaya, last time when we raised up this issue, the Chief Secretary was very sensitive to it, and he said, I didn't realize there was such a thing as gender budgeting. And he said that I called my finance department people and told them that they need to be looking at this issue. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit everyone, directly or indirectly, and many households have suffered, huge amount of expenses. There's a feeling that government should introduce COVID expense as an expenditure which can be covered by many through health insurance. And yes, government did show support to people, but there isn't a visible ground support for better healthcare infrastructure. This is largely missing, especially in states of the Northeast. In our own Meghalaya, for instance, we still have to travel to urban centers for healthcare. I don't know how much of allocation there is to increase healthcare facilities. because investment in healthcare as a percentage of GDP is still very less in this country. And the question to be asked is, why is it that taxes on tobacco and other intoxicants are not raised? In fact, has never been raised. Though cancer in the Northeast is growing, and the major cause for cancer is smoking, but all governments seem to tread cautiously when it comes to taxing tobacco. There has been a significant increase in people's awareness. Now, a large majority of people are taking health insurance, and the government has also been pushing health insurance. But the concern now is that government should focus on doubling the limit from what it is giving, 25,000 to perhaps 50,000 rupees. Because we have seen how difficult healthcare is, especially during the pandemic, especially if you do not find room in a government facility and you have to go to a private facility. They have been fleecing people, but there is a reason for that. Perhaps the cost for setting up private hospitals is very high due to GST on healthcare equipment, which hospitals cannot claim since services provided are exempted from GST. So if the government were to give healthcare related equipment at a minimal cost or minimal GST, it might boost infrastructure and technology adaptation in the health sector. This should also help in giving the, tertiary care facilities in states like ours or cities like ours, which are third or fourth or second tier cities. Across the country, of course, people are suffering from inflation. And there seems no tangible evidence that this is being addressed. Then we come to education. The question I'm asking myself is whether 6% of the GDP is enough for education. Of course, the government has very high of establishing a digital university for online education with a focus on information, with a focus on communication technology and all that. How the states adapt to all this will be something to watch out for. Then you have this PM e-Vidya program, 1 class, 1 TV channel, which would be further expanded to 12 to 200 TV channels. I think this would be a great measure, and it has come about because of the realization of how important online classes are. Then as per the new guidelines of the new education policy, a large part of the GDP would support would be supporting education, and this 6% of the GDP, whether it's adequate or not, is a matter to be debated. But I think this step has to be taken in tune with the changing times, the education patterns, and so on. The budget also says that skill training will be offered by selected IITs in all the states to young people. I think this is a new incentive which needs to be lauded. The feeling again is government should have invested more in education, especially in providing quality infrastructure for government schools. We don't have to tell anyone in this room just how dilapidated government institutions are in this country, in this state, in this region. Coming to women and health care and nutrition, we have been looking at the indices from time to time, some of those provided by NSSO, some provided by NFHS, and the latest ones by NITI Aayog. Especially for states like Meghalaya, just think of the nutritional levels which are so very low. 56% of women anemic, about 46% of children wasted because of malnutrition or undernutrition. Think about that wastage. Who's going to bring them back into any kind of system that will benefit them in the long run? And actually, when this government, the NDA government took over in 2015, in 2014. By 2015, they had launched this Mission Portion to address malnutrition in women, adolescents, and children, especially anemia in pregnant and lactating mothers. And they had said that this would be addressed by 2022, following the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. I don't know how much of that has been achieved and how much is left to be achieved. They have allocated about 20,000 crores to Shaksham, Anganwadis, and for this Mission Portion. What has not been spoken about in the budget at all, which is a very important facet of healthcare, is the ASHAs, the ASHA workers. I mean, they have been phenomenal in their, in their service during COVID. It's so sad that we haven't really understood their importance and allocated anything for them at all, not mentioned. Insofar as housing and water supply is concerned, I think this government is very ambitious. It wants about 80 lakh households to get their own homes by 2022-23. And they have allocated 48,000 crores for this. They have allocated 60,000 crores for provision of drinking water under the Jal Jeevan Mission. A lot again depends on implementation at the state level. But anyway, this is for the central government to look at, because central government supervision, monitoring is always very, very lax. There are 7.3 lakh home buyers benefit to the credit-linked subsidy scheme on homes. This year, the budget has allocated a further 48,000 crores for the completion of those 8 million homes under the Prime Minister's Urban and Gramin Mission schemes. People have already spoken about the 1,500 crore for special incentives to the Northeast. I don't know how far this will go, but I hope that it will go towards building better communication infrastructure between the states, because we are very disconnected between the states. I think that is all. Oh, I foresee just one problem. The center has allowed the state, in the budget now this year, the center has allowed the states to borrow 50-year interest-free loans over and above the usual borrowings. My concern is that many of the states are known for their profligacy. They will borrow, and it's not as if these borrowings will be written off. So who is going to pay the loan for the long run? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam Patricia. That was really, I think, from the heart, and then for the common man and the common woman. Now, I think we are left with 3 presentations. There are 2 very specific important presentations to be undertaken by Professor Pati and Dr. Prasenjit. So I would hold it on some time, because these are all very specific, targeted and important presentations. So through a lot of insights. That's why I now come to you, Professor De. Kindly make your presentation. And as I know, you would be speaking on thinking that has gone to and approaches towards financial management. So the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I think we heard a lot from the previous speakers, and mostly they have covered all aspects. It happens, who comes a little late, so I have more or less nothing to say. Only some general overview as you asked, so I will tell. Yeah. It's not a presentation, you can say it's a plain language, what I said. What is budget all about and why we discuss it? We all know, nothing to speak here, the students are here also. It's a statement of accounts of the expected income that from different sources you are earmarking, and your intended expenditure that you will note down. Note down on paper, fine, 1,000 crore, talia in budget speech. But per head, we will not speak. In percentage, we will not speak. 70,000 crore, 2 lakh crore, fine, talia. And this direction of this budget is fixed based on the previous year's performance of the economy. It comes through the economic survey presented at table 1 day or 2 days before, isn't it? Last year's, this was the performance. We are lacking in this, we are excelling in this. Where there is deficiency, we have to address. So some socio-economic considerations come in picture. So that people say big jargon, ISLM, I don't understand. Liebenstein's critical minimum effort, big boost so that economy will flourish after 50 years. Whether my grandchildren will enjoy, whether they will be here, we don't know whether R2 will be here. So it's okay. So that comes. But are we really consider all those things are considering? Because instead of socio-economic considerations, what I feel, the budget is more stressed on the political economic considerations. Politics more. Obviously, if it is a byproduct, you do good for the people and politically I'll be benefited or loser, no matter. But if that becomes a prime consideration, then it becomes difficult. Earlier we saw, no, whoever becomes the rail minister, the most of the new trains through his state, he will announce. So that some of these points that come to my mind that I will tell. But still, looking at these allocations, we discuss every year at different forum. Why we discuss? Still partly some intention of the government becomes clear. I want to do. I am not a master degree holder, graduate, but I want to do big bridge, graduation pass. No harm in it, thinking and aspiring. Madhyamik pass student also can think of a big business house owner. Or is no problem. So you can think and do that. So some of these that are whatever, as I saw, a few cases I came across. I'm not taking much time, okay? So what I cross. Suppose in budget it is written, this 1,000 crore given for the housing. I will not mention because it will be critical, politics is there. But suppose only few money is realized. You allocate, for example, in an area, 75,000 crore or 100 crore. But finally, your local area, the person who is responsible for implementation got only 7 crore or 7 lakh at home. And suppose you tell, I saw in paper, they announced 75 lakh, you told only 7 lakh. All houses should be built with 15 families, why not? I got only 7 lakh. You and cry and fighting. Because from center, it is written on newspaper, 75 lakh. You told only 7 lakh. I saw another case in our area, that side, up to Bakura, that rail line. Only few kilometers are left. Project taken 10 to 15 years back. Allocation 1,000 crore. Only 1,000 rupees spent last year. 1 lakh. The budget, so it is written. But what is there? Unless it is really happy ever. In the earlier last 10 years, whatever budget allocation was there, and after the end of the year, how much was really spent, whether there is any deficiency, there may be plus minus 5 to 10%. Fine. That is always error will be there. Emerging demand may come, pandemic come. We don't expect unexpected things come. But it cannot be that we earmark 1 lakh. I spent only 1,000. So in terms of how will you know? So how to analyze? But still we discuss some of the intentions in the allocations. You will where hint is given which way, because I cannot remember the number, only example I get. So that you will find plenty of such examples. Fine. In this budget, in the preamble, what they said, PM Gati Shakti. That is their intention. Now, road may come after 50 years. We are earmarking 25 years. It is not China that we earmark today. Say that 5 years project will be completed, but it will be completed in 3 years. Stress will be given. Here 25, we are earmarking, it may be 50 years. Very fine. Capital goods should be generated. It has a long-term future. After some lag, definitely, income should be generated. Employment will be created. That is good. A railway, roadway. And if I am alive that time, if I cannot drive also, my son or grandson can drive. I will be sitting, if I am alive, on the back seat. and there will be no speed breaker. It will be very nice at least. I like it. It's very good. Waterway, airway. I am dreaming for buying a helicopter on my own so that I can drive. So it's fine. But most of these works will be done in a public-private partnership mode. That's good. Just I am giving you some example. Whatever we built earlier, some of the capital resources from the taxpayers' money, we are now handing over to the private in the name of improving efficiency. Government job owners, they do not come. 11 o'clock come, 2 o'clock go home. It is running under losses. Efficiency is very poor. So give to private. Fine. Efficiency will be there. You are monopolizing some resources. And these critical resources, some people, they only in the debate, one person was arguing with me. You had only Air India. When new airlines came, privatization came, you got a cheaper rate, some of the routes, new avenues. But suppose from Shillong Gauhati highway, from taxpayers' money, if you construct, can you instill the competition? You hand over this, for example, to a private company. Example I am telling, don't say. Every day 5% increase of that toll tax from 55 to 60, 80, 90. Who will control that price? How social welfare will be maximized? You are the student of economics. Is always underutilized if you go monopolize. It's not that monopolized resources controlled by the government. That cost plus some markup, they will fix the price, or if it is subsidized, it will be late, like your military, postal, all their other services. But this type of, you cannot say the toll tax is more on that way, I will go by another way, or toll tax is less, competition cannot be there. An airport, we built with the help of the private public's tax money, then we hand over to a government, private, for example. Now earlier, you are taking some 400, 500 rupees airport service tax. It's all inclusive. Now once a private Professor Kabra took over that airport, no, if you enter also 50 rupees, if you took, then also 10 rupees. You should be in a queue. If you are in a urgent, you have to go for latrine first. Then urgent charge 20 rupees, otherwise 5 rupees. Who will control that pricing? You cannot have another airport within a 5 minutes away. And you can ask your Air India, you land here airport charge will be less. So competition, you cannot generate such type of resources. So where it is by nature, it will be monopolized. And if you hand over to a private, it is bound to reduce the social welfare. Clear? And efficiency, forget, only money. It is not that it is creating employment. What type of is it? Inferior type of employment. All day, 70 kg bag on your back, Amazon's material, hostel to hostel you give, 5,000 per month, a master degree holder student. Efficiency. But if you do not earn, how can you spend? Even after doing all this, employment gone down, we are getting two sides of the sword, both way cutting. Reduced employment and other inflation. How to survive? They are in a dilemma. As my driver today, sir, now school is open, you are asking me to do. If again tomorrow school is closed, what shall I do? At least 5,000 I am getting from Amazon. So employment, good employment created, 5,000. But regularly you are giving me 8,000 or 10,000, but uncertainty is involved. What to do? This uncertain situation, how to overcome? Only seeing that after 25 years, and maybe another 5-10 years left, and maybe new government will come, change their focus. The road may not come. That this way you plan, the other way I need, because my government, my supporter is on that side. Who will tackle all this? Where more political economic considerations come, instead of social development is the prime focus of your development perspective of making your budget. Have you thought of it? Anyway, some of the highlights, I'll not tell them whether you like it or not. So that is another big issue that I would like to. Anyway, but it's not that every work that you do, all of that. Definitely some positive sides will be there. Only that those who are pro-government, very nice, very nice. But you ask any point, they cannot say DB only. Very nice it is. And those who are anti-government, whether understand or not, is very bad, very bad. I'm not in that kind of situation. Always go by the analysis, your students, and see. I like your digital facilities expansion in rural areas, very good thing. It was earlier also there regularly. But I'm apprehending because sitting here in the state capital, I had to keep 6 different connections for my children's education. Even last 1 month, no Geo connection here. You dial hello, disconnect. So they are given more focus by this government. The Geo should come, Geo University, Geo. So all this, very good. As connections. If Geo does not work evening, switch over to BSNL fiber. Every alternate day, I had to call SDE here. Madam, connection is not coming. My son's class is hampered. Please do. So we want again to go to privatize. Last year, I had written a piece of article in some paper that this same, instead of making private, if it is run in a private mode, at least it should be kept under government's control. You link, instead of giving per month salary directly, link with performance. So your employment could be intact and they could work. This much work, this much salary. More work, more salary. Publish more paper, more increment will be given to a teacher. Otherwise, an incentive. They will not run under losses. It could be done. So I got scolding also from some corner also. Why you wrote right this time? You are left, you are right, you are above, like this. Anyway, but that's a good thing if we can do digital in real sense. It is not that you open the mobile and power gone. Digital divide you cannot do in rural areas. It is already there. I visit every time my rural area. I observe how people are functioning like that. ATM machine is there, but hardly people draw money because no connection. So like that. Obviously, in the beginning, anything, there should be some hitch. Over time, that will be improved. I will hope that. So that is one thing. Then another thing is that now they extended the facilities. If you do not have even PAN, you can submit this through your Aadhaar. So those facilities extended. You can give a rectification after 2 years, 3 years also your income tax. So some facilities are very good. Capital goods generation is very good, but you cannot ignore many other short-term things. First, you have to survive today. Then you think of your sustainability, future, like that. All these things. Northeast also got a special package. I forgot, somebody mentioned 1,500 crore. 8 states, 200 crore. That is also budgeted. As I said, budgeted. If actual expenditure, then per head, how much? You can imagine. Very good, but initiative is very good for startup. We are, along with this, we have Actist. We are acting, connecting with this to bring more Chinese product, Philippines product, and selling our money. We are not stressing on the production local. Connection will improve trade, but more import, less of, more export of money only, no good. So far will be your state balance. You go by that. When we become full-fledged dialogue member of ASEAN since 2002 till today. You see the budget is both increased, but the gap also you can see how it's going up. So anyway, but these are the good things. And proudly we announced 9.7% growth this year. 9.27%. Very good. 9.27% over what? Last year, 7.75 income reduced GDP. So if you had 100 rupees, it came down to 92. Base came down. Over that 9, so 101, barely you reached now on the 2019 situation. You did not grow, but we are bouncing back. And that too in monetary sense, not in real sense. Now inflation 6-7% you discount. Are you standing? Very high growth of the last 7 decades or like that. What growth? If you have 1 rupee income, tomorrow 2 rupees, double 100% growth. If you are 100 rupee to 101, only 1%. So barely we gone above 2019 situation. We did not grow at all. Don't go by the bluffing. You are the student of economics and statistics. Go by that. So not only this budget, but all allocations, as I said in the capital expenditure, quick implementation is needed. Okay, good thing. It is not that we are thinking, sleeping on the bed, thinking, time goes 3 years. Once it happened that we cultivated huge potato 1 year, another year dhania, that is coriander, because previous year price was 6 rupees kg, very high price. So next year came down to 3 rupees because we cultivated more. But when we cultivate, we should encourage the farmer, because your digital and other technological environment friendly, these will be announced in this budget also. It is given. It's a very good thing. But how it will be implemented, the cost escalation that will be there, how to take into account, because whether it has poison or inside or not, because common man knows where price is less. How to convince them, how to make it cost effective, what are the steps can be taken? It is not, because have you seen during this pandemic year, any big politician, any big industrialist became loser? You did not. We are the common man sufferer. How to tackle those things? In the budget, nothing. Radar, Manrega, money reduced. Only 500, on that you survive. Next day you will take it back because mustard oil became double price. So don't worry, 500 given, be happy. So that is one thing. Whatever you do, but you have to implement timely. That year what happened? That in November when you cultivate, suppose potato, so people should estimate in every state, every block, there are machines, people are there, BDO, etc. This is the expected or approximated area cultivated.
It's there. You have to come.
5 minutes. Okay.
No, 2 minutes now maximum.
Okay, 2 minutes. So within that, you have to see if there is a normal weather, what will be expected output. So you have to think in advance, there is an excess or deficit, so that there will not be a price crash or escalation. You can export or import whatever needed. But that year, what they did, after the harvest, when people could not sell their product, they started thinking where to export. Another 3 months gone, by that time, potato spoiled. So your things should not be like that. So that is, I told her for Northeast also, this digital divide, no need to say, I said it earlier several times in other forums also, that telephone, mobile, all these things. So whose income increase in this situation where inequality became highest in the last few decades, poverty percentage increase. So only by thinking of the supply side, the road will be constructed, supply will come. Who will buy your thing? Even I am keeping 6 mobile connections, so many, yeah, how many people can afford? And even if you buy in rural area, where is the connection? As last year we saw in Mizoram, people have to go up on the top of the tree to give the exam. So in rural area, supply is there, digit is there, but you have to go upstairs of that top of the tree. So you do, very nice. So only beneficiaries even within this, those who are handling medical business in the medical equipment, your this electronic items, data services. So their income. So that's why only a few companies, they become more and more richer. General people become more poorer. Just to compensate their poverty, 500 per month. Very nice. So this lag, how to take into account, I tell this lag thing. Anyway, so that's okay. I will stop here. Only talking about that Bitcoin or this digital currency. What is it? I do not understand. It's a monkey business.
Okay.
At least in the share market, you know this company is performing. Share you buy. But what is the digital currency in the air? Only on note that you have this many currency. If you next day ask, we don't know what. Well, so one day you will be given more. 500 you give, next day 1,000. I got more profit like a jua. You know, the lottery. Again, after then, you will invest 5 lakh, all will be taken out. Market will crash.
I think leave it to Pati. Sorry.
Thank you.
Leave it to Professor Pati.
How digital currency, I don't know this will work. As another thing, as some more points I could tell.
Yeah, I think
Thank you
very
very much. Yeah.
I will take it up. Thank you so much for that insightful analysis, giving it totally, I mean to say very, very concerned kind of a insightful analysis. I think the last word should go to the social scientist. We economists sometimes have a jaundiced eye. So looking at the budget. So scanning, decoding the budget from a social scientist point of view is much more comprehensive compared to an economist. So that's why I'm keeping the social scientist towards the fag end. And I request Professor Pati, I'm to say to speak on your topic which you are giving to me.
Yes.
That's I think impact on finance and stock. Okay. 10 to 12 minutes.
Thank you, Professor Panda, for taking up this discussion. Maybe a little late, but as you told, better to have it rather not to have it at all. We have listened, I think, both counter arguments as well as the favorable arguments. I was a little scared when Professor Dev was talking about all these things, but finally he told at least we can understand the share market when. that reassured me that yes, I can proceed now. Yeah. So that actually reassured me that I can proceed further. Otherwise, I was a little scared.
I stopped.
So at least he understands what is share and how to invest. I'll be talking about how does the market reacts to the budget, and can you really take the reaction of the market as the indicator of the budget efficacy or not? And what reaction come immediately and what reaction come after a number of years, or you can say post 1 year. So to decode some of the things, just I will try to explain the background. When I talk about market, let me specify market in India. Basically, when you talk of financial market, we talk about stock market here. And the stock market, again, in India, we have monopoly of equity dimension only. That an equity stock market is only market which is popular in India, because bond market is not very popular. And it is purely dominated by the government sector bonds. So that is exclusive market, which is dominated by only bonds which are issued by government and government-like institutions. So normally, when we talk about market in India, we talk about equity, and we always look at some of the index which is asked on our screen, TV screen every day, Sensex and Nifty. So from there, we get a sense, yes, market is reacting. And if you see the budget day analysis, and even during the time of budget speech, the Sensex and Nifty figure keeps on rolling on your screen. That means it is an important indication whether budget is really going to give some boost to the market or not, and we should understand that. So let me give just an outline of the market of India, that what we were when this Sensex started in 78, 79 as 100, started with a base of 178, 79. And today, just I was checking frequently the mobile. Why I was checking just to know what is the current? Because today is unfortunate day for India. We have crossed by 2,500. Oh, okay, this is the latest. So I was checking that so that I can speak you. I can tell you all this thing.
Reason?
This is the
This war, impending war.
okay. It started with 2000 cross in the beginning, then suddenly it went up a little bit, but finally it settled below 2,500 of yesterday's. So can we say that budget has impacted it? That means no. Because on the day of budget, we had more than 880 points surge, followed by another 200-300. That means over 2 days, we got a surge of around 1,000 points. But slowly, we have seated around more than 3,500 points. It was 58,000 Sensex plus. Today it is below 55,000. So can you say that this is a budget impact? That means budget is not good. That means. So how to decode that? Whether the impact is there or not. So the 78, 79 index, which was 100 rupees. Or 100, let us say 100. That means in a common layman's term, if we say that somebody who invested 100 rupees in 78, 79, today it is 55,000, 550 times. Can you imagine? 100 rupees become 55,000 over 42 years? Nowhere, no bank, no institution will give you this. No economy will give you this. No economy. The world, go to any economy except China, nobody will give you this return. That means it is important. That's why the flash is coming on a screen. Every day people are talking about this. That's why. That means there is a lot of opportunity to make money. Who makes money here? Investors. Yes, individuals, institutions, basically business houses. They make a lot of profit out of it. Compare with the GDP. When you talk about budget, it is basically a holistic document. It is not only market-specific document. So talk about the country as a whole and look at the growth of or the time, how many times the GDP has increased over these 42 years. Only 14 times. 550 times investment has increased. GDP has increased only by 14 times, 1/4. Can you imagine this? That means market is really interesting place to make money. Whether country goes on or not, but market is market. Market will give you a lot of money if you know how to play in the market. Being a commerce person, I failed to play nicely in the market. I failed to understand the market, though I teach market to my students. So it has a lot of dimensions. We have to see when the budget is placed that what are the directions which will drive the market. That is very important. So 3-4 directions we have to market always sees, not these things. Market will see that whether budget is talking about these 3-4 things or not. But provided there is a solid foundation, without a big good foundation, even if there are indicators in the budget, market will not react positively. And the basic foundation is that whether there is a good rainfall prediction for the next year or not. Market is all about future. It is not about the post-mortem things. It is all about future. This is 50% the reality that is existing and 50% is the anticipation or future prediction. So there is a 2 component in market. So the reflection is different here. So market does not talk about the things which we have, which we expect to have next year, that also get reflected in market. So whether rainfall forecast is, it is not the rainfall today, whether tomorrow or next year rainfall forecast is good or not. Yes, it is good. This year, at least the forecast is good for next year. So we are happy. Whether there is going to be a food production and there will be sufficient stock to feed the 1.4 billion people, whether that is there or not. That means assuring our population that yes, there will be no food crisis. This is the second dimension. This is a foundation. The third is whether enough FDI is there or not in our exchequer. If these 3 are there, then we are on a very strong foundation and that will take market up. If these 3 are not there and somewhere there is a problem, either of these 3, the market will not. So when you talk about the budget, we have to understand this first. And right now, these 3 are very comfortable. We have bumper production, bumper food stock with India right now. Rainfall forecast is quite normal. FDI is quite high. Very big FDI we have right now. Just to China now. Next week. There is some slowdown in the recent months, but it is quite very, very, very big. So foundation is very strong. Then the indicators. When the local market, then indicate what are the indicators which we should look at. Most important indicator whether continuity in the reform or not. That means budget document where it talks about the continuity or not. What does it mean continuity? That means continuity in the reform. But there are several sector reforms are there and budget indicates several sectors, social sector reform, this, that, so many. Rural sector, this, that. No, market doesn't talk about all these things. Though indirectly, yes, but market specifically talk about some of the reforms which are in finance sector, that is banking and insurance reform. If that is there, market will be very happy. Market will talk about the reform, whether the public sector disinvestment is coming up now. That shows that government is losing its shackle. Government wants to move out of the business. If that is there, market will be happy. So that private investment will go on. So that reform, whether that continuity is coming or not. The third most important reform market always want to see tax reform. Is there anything for the market or not? Tax reform means progressive taxation, tax base widening, and finally, rationalization of tax. It is not reduction of tax. Reduction of tax is definitely a boost, but people look at this. That means we are going in that direction or not. If all these reforms are triggered in the budget document somewhere, then naturally market will be happy and it will continue to be happy for next 1 to 2 year, 3 year, 4 year continuity. So one day love and hate story of budget reaction to the market is not the real budget reaction to the market. Audio is not there. There are budgets and budget days where market has come down, market has gone up. If you look at the previous 10, 15 budgets, on the budget day, all the types of reactions have been observed. One day, one budget day, 800 bob, another 1,000 rupees down, it keeps on growing. So that is not the indication. So one is the continuity in the reform. That is very important. The second one is there are certain things to be controlled, whether that trigger is there or not. So what to control? Basically, what investors look at. Investor looks at that whether inflation can be controlled, whatever budget is proposing, by that whether we are targeting in lower inflation or not. Whether that direction is given in that budget document or not. If that is there, yes, market will be happy. The second, whether the fiscal deficit is going to be controlled or not. If these two control mechanism is placed in the budget somehow, or a direction is given to this, then market will be happy. If you look at the budget document this year, government has told two things. Inflation we will target with 4 plus minus 2% as the monetary policy committee of RBI says for last 2 years. And government is planning that yes, we will be within that range. And it is on an average 4.25 to 5%. So it is good for the market. Market has accepted this view. Yes, inflation will not much. Overall inflation not much in the next year. RBI also talks about 4.5% next year. But the fiscal deficit front, if you look at that, there is a little bit of problem. This year it is 6.9, revised